Following the collapse of Roman authority, Western Europe splintered. Communication networks decayed, and learning retreated into isolated monasteries, and the continent fractured into disconnected, highly localized communities. Out of this vacuum emerged the Frankish king Charlemagne. In a few decades of warfare, his armies swallowed up the fragmented borders of his neighbors, bringing up to 20 million people under his direct control. Ruling a landmass this vast posed a severe logistical problem. The empire had no standing army, it lacked a permanent capital city, reliable communication simply did not exist. How do you administer laws and extract resources from a continent-spanning population when a message takes weeks to travel from one end of the realm to the other? To avoid collapse, the Carolingians developed an administrative architecture designed to project authority from a mobile court to the furthest reaches of the frontier. That core was the royal household itself. Charlemagne operated an itinerant court. Because he moved constantly, the center of imperial power existed strictly wherever the king and his entourage pitched their tents. Eventually, Charlemagne sought a physical manifestation for this authority. He began constructing the palace at Aachen. Designed with golden mosaics and an octagonal vaulted ceiling, it was a deliberate echo of antiquity, a signal that the Franks were the new Caesars. Even with a grand palace, a massive administrative hurdle remained. After centuries of isolation, the written script of Europe devolved into a mess of localized handwriting. Monks in one region could barely read the documents produced by a monastery 3 towns over. To solve this, Charlemagne recruited top scholars like Alcuin of York to standardize the written word. They created a single alphabet for the entire empire, Carolingian Minuscule. It merged Roman and insular styles into clear, uniform shapes. Standardized scriptoria could now rapidly copy classical texts, preserving lost knowledge and ensuring imperial edicts were read uniformly across the realm. To project this codified authority outward, the center dispatched pairs of royal envoys called Missi Dominici. They traveled directly into the provinces to judge cases, raise armies, and enforce the king's laws. Standardizing culture and communication gave Charlemagne a mechanism for control. By creating a unified operating system for Europe, his court could govern effectively from the center. But geography has its limits. Far to the south, the rugged mountain valleys of the Pyrenees formed the extreme edge of the empire. Up here, central power began to fade. Charlemagne learned this the hard way. In 778, he led a massive invasion into Spain, which ended in a disastrous Basque ambush and forced a retreat at the Roncesvalles Pass. He never campaigned in Spain again. Instead, the Franks established the Spanish March. As this map illustrates, the March was a militarized buffer zone carved out of the Momans, designed specifically to absorb raids and protect the Frankish heartland from the Emirate of Córdoba. Maintaining this frontier presented a difficult administrative reality. The itinerant king could not keep a permanent military presence here. Defense and loyalty had to be purchased. The court used the apprecio system, granting deserted land to refugees, known as Hispani. In exchange for property rights, they provided active military service. To manage these territories, the crown appointed local nobles to act as counts. They dispensed justice, collected dues, and led military campaigns against incursions on behalf of a king sitting hundreds of miles away. While the Spanish March was officially Carolingian territory, it was functionally governed by autonomous local warlords. This reliance on regional power brokers created a structural vulnerability that would soon fracture the empire. This vulnerability was exposed almost immediately after Charlemagne's death. The reign of his son, Louis the Pious, devolved into intense dynastic infighting, and the final years of his rule were plagued by a bitter and violent civil war among his very own heirs. In 843, the Treaty of Verdun officially tore the massive territory apart, splitting the unified Carolingian Empire into 3 distinct vertical realms. Battered by continuous Viking raids in the north and endless succession crises, central authority weakened. Out on the periphery, regional leaders realized they no longer needed the center to survive. Down in the Spanish March, counts simply stopped seeking royal permission to rule. They dealt with neighboring powers on their own terms, defending their valleys and laying the political groundwork for an autonomous Catalonia. Yet, even as the political borders collapsed and the territory fractured, the administrative tools built by the Carolingian court survived. The political empire shattered, but the standard script created at Aachen survived as the foundation for the fonts we use today. By preserving classical literature and codifying legal systems, Charlemagne's scholars created an intellectual framework that survived the collapse of the throne.